I welcome you all to the third session of the day 3 of the Gyan course, Women Writers and Thinkers in the Modern Critical Tradition. Once again, we have Professor Meena Mitrano with us, our esteemed speaker. After two great and insightful lectures on critique and the creatively states of HD and Adrian Rich, she is back again with us after a day's gap. So let me introduce once again Professor Meena Mitrano to you all formally. So, Professor Meena Mitrano is an associate professor of Anglo American literature at Ca' Foscari University of Venice. Her research focuses on modernism, literary theory, and feminist thought, with a particular interest in the work of Gertrude Stein and Susan Sontag. She has taught at various institutions, including Rutgers University, Spinoza University of Rome, and Loyola University Chicago. Her new book, Antigone Lil Ligame di Fratellanza, explores the figures of Antigone and its political implications. So, once again, we welcome you, Professor Mitrano, and over to you for your lecture. Thank you.
Thank you, Atalanto. Thank you very much. Welcome back. A warm welcome back to all participants. This day has the overall title, Weak Theories of the Subject, and Lecture 3 has its own specific title. Let me share the PowerPoint so that we can begin. Here we go. Sharing. Okay, you should be able to see the PowerPoint now.
Yes, ma'am. We can see you as well as the PowerPoint. It's perfectly visible.
Yeah. Thank you. As I was saying, Lecture 3 has its own specific title, Hannah Arendt and the Meaning of World. In day 1, we have been talking about the text, and we have stressed the link, rather, the fact that we all care for the link between the text and the world. But what do we mean when we talk about the world? Hannah Arendt can help us explore the meaning, a particular meaning of world. Now, I would like to, this is an image of Arendt that I'd like to comment on shortly. You see her lecturing, or rather delivering a seminar at the New School for Social Research at the New School in New York. She was, in fact, a German-American philosopher. But before we encounter Arendt, whom many of you may already either have heard of or read, let me recap briefly what we achieved in lecture 2, the last lecture. We unpacked the notion of the text and its evolution, especially in contemporary modernity in our times. We have been following its evolution from the post-structuralist refusal of first principles of coherence of single meanings to the metaphorical, I would say, unpacking of the text by H.D. and Rich, who put into play images like animal images and the image of the letter to try and offer their idea of what the text is and does. So we have moved from repudiation to graceful connections. The image of the ladder you will remember with its secret biblical echoes. It's about a dynamic movement, upward, downward, up and down, earth and sky. Dynamic and graceful connections. So the issue of form and discussion and destruction, as arisen in the process of encountering especially Rich and HD. You remember the mollusk and the diver, faced with overwhelming forces, that is, agents of form in a world in an environment that is driven by distraction or where distraction is always present. So we have also finally encountered the feminist idea of culture and language. Culture and language are unveiled as instruments of exclusion. You will remember the book of myths where our names, as Arentt wrote, do not appear. This is just a recap of lecture to remind you where we stopped at. Now we are bringing into the picture Hannah Arendt. And the first question, this is just a preview of what I like to share with you today in lecture 3. The first question that we may ask is certainly about her contribution to literary studies, which is the field, the discipline where from within which we are speaking. Now, what can therefore the German American philosopher Hannah Arendt contribute to literary studies? The answer will be she can contribute with her theory of language, a theory of language which is about the centrality of language. And because she makes us see, essentially, she will make us see a threshold to cross, threshold to cross. Arendt will offer, has the potential at least to offer a story of language that is very much akin to the feminist story of language, as, for example, found in Adrienne Rich, whereby there's always a threshold to language is not separate from a threshold to cross. It comes with, it's not just a dry abstract system, it comes with the problem of a threshold to cross, to feel inside, to feel in. So the potential of language not only to include but to exclude the threshold to cross is a kind of psychic limit that is part and parcel of every speaker. That's the feminist story of language and extended to the notion of the speaking subject, as we shall see. So we will explore, finally, Arendt's notion of the public space or sphere of appearance, which has a lot to do with this feminist idea of language. I think it resonates with it. So let me proceed to introducing Arendt. I like you to look at this image because you see her in action in a seminar in New York, but she was not born in the US. Arendt left Germany around the time of Adolf Hitler's rise to power in 1933. She lived in Czechoslovakia at first, then Switzerland, and finally settled, though briefly, in Paris. In 1941, in fact, she relocated permanently to the US. She became an exile for political reasons and settled in New York, where she lived her entire life teaching at the New York School for Social Research. So she became an American citizen in 1950 and wrote most of her books in the US. Most of them were written in the US, including perhaps what is her most well-known title, The Origins of Totalitarianism, published in 1951, but also The Human Condition, from which we're going to read together today a couple of passages, and also The Life of the Mind in unfinished volumes between 1977 and 1978, as well as other books, especially A Reflection on Revolution. And yet, despite the fact that she produced mostly during her American exile, when trying to isolate the core idea in Arendt's body of work, we realize that it emerges in a work that she wrote in Europe before she left Europe for political reasons. In fact, the core idea of Arendt's work, I would argue, can be found in a book, in a study entitled Rachel Varnhagen, The Life of a Jewess. It is a portrait of a European enlightenment. I will define her as an enlightenment intellectual. Rachel Varnhagen was born in 1771 and died in 1833. So she is in between Enlightenment Europe and early 19th century Europe. A very representative personality, a Jew, first of all, who tried to assimilate herself, although with some serious problems. Now, Arendt's study of Rachel Varnhagen was written in Europe in 1933. In 1933, and the study, however, was published in the US only in 1957. So there is a lag of time. Remember, as I mentioned, Arendt left Germany on the eve of Hitler's rise to power. She then relocated permanently in US only in 1941. Now, the key idea, the book is a portrait of an Enlightenment, early 19th century public intellectual. And the core idea of the book is also, I propose, the core idea of Arendt's entire work. And that is, the core idea is the potential of the linguistic relation, the potential of the linguistic relation to make a larger world, a more capacious world, a vaster world. Language and its centrality in making a larger, vaster world. Now, this insight takes shape during the composition of Rachel Varnhagen, even though Rachel is a part of. So, what is the story? Even though the point of the book is that even though Rachel is part of the elite of the Enlightenment Jewish elite, and even though, more importantly, she runs a salon, so she's at the center of literary debate, literary discussion, she remains a pariah. She remains an outcast. She thinks of herself and she views herself, and she's forced to view herself as an outcast. In Arendt's portrait, she's someone who waits to receive the ability to speak. She is someone who decides, whose only obsession, Arendt writes wonderfully, whose only obsession is to exit, quote, the mute spell of mere happening, end of quote, and exist among others. Now let's read, to unpack what this means, let's zoom in on a passage, the key passage, I think, from Rachel Varnhagen. Allow me to read and then comment on the passage. It was the great fortune of Rachel's that she found the one person she had trusted. It was a great opportunity to confide in history, in language. Only in the wholly liberated purity of the poetic, in which all words are, as it were, spoken for the first time, can language become her friend, one to whom she is willing to entrust herself and the unprecedented life. Goethe provided her with the language to speak. Again and again, his words freed her from the mute spell of mere happening, and her ability to speak provided her with an asylum in the world, taught her how to trust what she had heard. She had Goethe to thank for being able to speak. What is striking in this passage is not so much, at the surface level, the influence clearly that Goethe wielded on Rachel as an intellectual. I mean, that's the pretext of the passage. But the central issue is precisely the great opportunity to confide in history and language that the passage foregrounds. How does Rahel think about language? Well, it is a great opportunity to confide. Confide, it's a term of friendship, but it is about all, not a system, above all, not a system of size, but an ability. The term language comes as if it were the metaphor of a space where you're given the ability to speak. And notice the term language comes with the association of actually an infancy of language, a space or time of language where words spring up as if for the first time, where the life of word is experienced, where the speaker experiences the liveliness of words and therefore a certain belonging to language. This is the central issue. Clearly, the ability to speak that is emphasized in the passage does not have to do with the ability to pronounce words. It's not about that. It's not about pronouncing words correctly. But the ability to speak here, that Arendt is foregrounded here, comes with the sense of a friendship, that is of a relation, of a friendship is a close relation, so close, the sense of a close relation to language, a friendship, a familiarity with language, a familiarity with it, a kind of natality in it, the sense of having been born, which is strange because you may say we are all born, the minute we are born, biological, we are all born in a language, in a natural language. But here, Arendt is talking about another natality, a symbolic natality, and the need, the necessity to experience that natality, a necessity that Rachel felt, okay, and that in a condition of friendship that she felt she did not yet have. It became an achievement for her, a striving. But a natality, importantly, that, notice, can happen, a symbolic birth that can be experienced only if the ability is to speak is received from another. It was Goethe, but it could be another. Goethe here stands for another who enables Raquel, Arendt's Raquel, to feel that she can cross that threshold and enter. Because entering language here means entering qualified life, views, leaving behind the conditional bare life, naked life, Zoe, and entering qualified, associated life, being seen, heard, recognized by others. So the radiating center of Arendt's thought, the throbbing heart of Arendt's thought, the throbbing heart that you will encounter again and again in the human condition, that monumental work, a masterpiece, where Arendt paints a transhistorical condition of humanity. The radiating center of her thought is precisely found in Nuce, so to speak, in its initial auroral form, stage in Rachel Vernagen, and that is the inalienable exodus, the right that everyone has of exiting naked life, the mute spell of mere happening, and entering qualified life. So you see how this picture is emphasizing the fundamental role of language. There is a role that language plays, and that is fundamental in the transition from the mute spell of our naked life of being just bodies to the conditional subjects, being subjects among others in qualified life. Now, having uh, circumscribed somewhat the core of Arendt's thought, the throbbing heart of Arendt's thought, uh, let us then move on to understanding a little bit what she means by world. What is the consequence of this view of language that I presented? The consequence is precisely the meaning of world. Let me explain. What needs to be emphasized, first of all, is that for Arendt, it is not possible to speak of language without speaking about the world. The world means less a product of human thought, of human consciousness, a technology engineered by human consciousness, by man technician. Less that and more the problem of our proximity to things, to things. It is the name, world is the name for our inclusion in a web of relations, a web of interconnections, a web of relations outside of which it would be difficult, if not impossible, in fact, to feel that we are, that we exist without this web of relations, without being in this web of relations. It would be impossible to feel that we are, to feel that we exist. But what does world mean? Well, at the center of Arendt's world, of the sense that this term has in Arendt, is the idea is of a buzzing world of happening and becoming. Process dynamism plays an important role in Arendt's meaning of world. In fact, staying on this meaning, world refers to a deeply relational world. Arendt herself uses the word web, okay, worldwide web of relations, of interconnections, which means human and other creatures, objects, things, humans as well as things. So this web, World Wide Web, is at the same time immaterial and yet real, in the sense that without which we would not have a support for saying, for feeling, for experiencing that we are, that we exist. Now, language, the ability to speak, here is the logical connection between language and the word language, that is the ability to speak as we have unpacked it earlier on in the earlier slides, gives, you will remember, Raquel finds an asylum in the world when she realizes that she desires the ability to speak and therefore to be given to receiving the ability to speak from another. Language gives an asylum in the world understood as this wide web of interconnections. But the ability to speak, I emphasize, is received. Received. It's received from another. So Arendt's subject, the minute we step into bios, the minute we step into the social dimension, social political dimension of life, the minute we exit naked life and we step into that social political dimension, we become subjects in our bodies that ascend to subjectivity. Arendt's subject receives language rather than masters it. So we don't have a subject object, okay, opposition, but it's more of a swerve toward the idea of a weaker. That's why the overall title contains the adjective weak, a weaker version of the subject of knowledge, of the subject of thought. It's not a mastering subject, but it is a subject connected, interconnected with others and with things to the point of being in a receptive, receiving position, posture. Now, Arendt understands the world. I would like to pen the note that I think, judging from your responses, your brilliant responses to day one, I think might resonate with many of you. So Arendt understands the world not as the limited precincts of human consciousness, okay, but as the name for a wide web of relations. We've seen that. We're still seeing that on this slide. So from this perspective, we could say that she is a relational thinker. Remember, we mentioned Latour, right? Latour, a contemporary relational thinker. Arendt might be considered, a relational thinker. She is, I think. For Arendt, in fact, the world is not divided into two camps. She does not stress a division into two camps, human camp, non-human camp. It is a buzzing and blooming world of happening that we find in the human condition, in Rahel Tornage, in that passage we read. And she would support, I think, contemporary relational thinkers who champion Hanman, for example, who champion a view of the world as a non-anthropocentric web of relations. She would do that. She would support that, but with a difference. And I want to emphasize the difference. For Arendt, in this ineluctably relational world, one does not cease to be at risk. One does not stop being at risk of being reduced to the mute spell of mere happening. The risk of being reduced to naked life is always around the corner, and our message is that we should remember that. She calls attention to the persistence of that risk of being reduced to the spell of mere happening, to bodies without value, to naked life. So the risk is true for humans, obviously. As you know, when we talk about injustice, we also talk about that theoretical baggage. The risk is true for humans, but I would argue it's also true for things. Both humans and things are interconnected in this world wide web, immaterial but also real. Things become a support of our presence, our existence, a reminder of the presence of others. In Arendt, being is a movement of externalization, of expression, a movement of externalization, expression, outward, unfolding expression shared by all agents and all elements. She writes, everything that is false must appear. Everything that is, everything must appear. Now we have to deal with the meaning of appear, this verb, and of appearance. As I previewed, she theorized the space of appearance. So we need to unpack that meaning. So I really wanted to append this note for those of you who are interested in integrating the past and the present in the Arendt's closer past, of integrating not only the past of the present, but the West and the East and all and other regions of the world in their attempt to understand where our interest, strong interest for the non-human today comes from, and the function, the theoretical political function of that interest. So language is important because it supports our inclusion in a wide web of relations. He said that Arendt's Rachel seeks the ability to speak because it will give her an asylum, a shelter in the world. But language and the asylum it affords can only come to her as the immaterial gift from another, as something that she receives. She writes, no tradition had transmitted anything to her. Naked life is there, without tradition, without legacy. Arendt's point is that Rachel receives language and the knowledge that she has entered the world. It's not just the reception of a system of words of sign, but it's about receiving the knowledge that she has entered the world. She has crossed that threshold. This is a proof of Arendt's relational vision, but I would say also a bridge built across feminist theory, because that vision of language is deeply shared by feminist thinkers across different regions of the world. We mentioned Rich, okay, and you remember the Book of Myths, which our names do not appear. The reason, and some of you during our interaction, during the tutorial, some of you asked about the role of language in this redrawing of the world that becomes vaster and more inclusive. And we said how fundamental language is for Rich. I think Arendt and Rich resonate with each other in a very meaningful way as far as the role of language is concerned. Language is about receiving an ability to speak, a psychic support, a symbolic birth. And it's only the other that can give you this symbolic birth. So you don't have the self-sufficient ego, okay? Cogito ergo sum. You don't have that self-sufficient, turret-like, self-enclosed ego, the I thing that is the mask of thought. You have a weaker version of the thinking subject who receives who's maimed, if you like, without this gift. And it is no coincidence, of course, that to theorize this weaker subject was a Jewish philosopher writing about the experience of a Jewish woman in early 19th century Europe. So the point is that Rahel and the speaking subject in Arendt's thought experiences herself as the one who receives rather than masters. Okay, now the world is a common reality. And recapping so that we can move on to appearance, the world is a common reality, and as you see on this slide, the important point is that the world is a shelter. Okay, it gives hospitality in a common reality, insofar as this hospitality is achieved through a movement of expression, externalization, for the common space outside of which nobody exists. Everything that is must appear. So Raquel exemplifies Arendt's central idea, the experience of a great overhaul of the self from shadow to light, from naked life to finding asylum, shelter, which assimilates the question of language to the question of an ease, a comfort, an ease in the world, a well-being in the world. So the question of language becomes the question of the problem of a well-being in the world. Arendt assumes that to live in the world does not imply its reduction to a human space, okay, a human place of dwelling. She suggests a fundamental meaning of living, which entails a recalibration of relations among all the other agents and elements that have equally come to live in the world. In the human condition, for example, things are elements in the world. They feature prominently. A table, a chair, feature prominently as intermediaries of human connections. Not only do they relate to us, but they put us in relation. With their intermediary function, they provide us the sense of a shared world. Shared world. World is shared space. So now we can move on to the space of appearance. Just keeping track of time. Now, the human condition is, as I said, a monumental architecture where Arendt recounts the human condition, beginning with the Greek polis. The human condition is a reprise on a much larger scale of, of the argument in Rachel Farnagan. That's why I was keen on beginning with Rachel in unpacking the meaning of world, taking our cue from Rachel Farnagan. Because what you have in the human condition is on a larger scale, the transition from naked life to a higher sphere of being, a desirable transition that is no longer limited to women like Rahel or to historically disadvantaged subjects, but comprises all human beings. It's extended to all human beings. The transition results in the notion of the space of appearance. I'm on human condition pages 207 to 111. The edition that I've indicated, in the reading materials. This says the first English translation, but it came out in the 90s, in the early 90s. So let me focus on a specific passage because on the fact that the space of appearance in Arendt's thought is modeled on the Greek polis. That is, on the conviction of certain ideas behind the Greek polis. Uh, Polis being not only the space of qualified life of beings, but also the space of logos, where meaning, common meaning, was possible. So the conviction, the Greek polis was based on the conviction that action and speech create a space between the participants, which can find its proper location almost anytime and anywhere. So the Greek polis is a model, but it has a transhistorical potential. You can find a location. It's a portable idea. You can find a location. It's a traveling concept. You can find a location anytime and anywhere. It is the space of appearance in the widest sense of the word, namely the space where I appear to others as others appear to me, where men and women, I would argue, exist not merely like other living or inanimate things, so not merely like as bodies, but make their appearance. And here we recall that symbolic birth, that stepping into language, that crossing the threshold to language that we have heard as a need, indeed as an obsession in Raquel Charnhagen. Hence the importance of language. The importance of language. Neither an acquired instrument. Language, many people assume that language is an instrument. That actually might be inappropriate. In fact, the great Emil Baumanist refuted this definition. Language is not an instrument. Language is exactly coeval with the human. So neither an acquired instrument, so it's the problem of the human for Baumanist. But for Arendt, back to Arendt, it's neither an acquired instrument nor a system of signs that can be studied or by taking your distance, objectifying it. But it is an opportunity, an immaterial gift. Now, I want to move on to the other modernity. I want to say something about Arendt's idea of the other modernity because her idea of language comes from this other notion of modernity. You may hear that Arendt insists on a certain dynamic and nuanced notional world, the web of relations, the wide web of relations, the notion of a subject dynamically, kinesthetically stepping into the sphere of language, the space of language. So she insists on a dynamic and nuanced notional world. And this insistence comes from her own understanding of modernity. She is a thinker of modernity. She's a thinker of modernity, but the thinker of another modernity. What does it mean? Traditional modernity is usually associated with progress and emancipation, gaining rights, industrial progress. And these things are not wrong. Okay, these things are not wrong. But traditionally, modernity is associated with this arrow forward moving, linear direction, whereby as time progresses, also the human condition improves. Arendt's modernity is different. She throws into relief a progress that is haunted by archaic forces, the return of archaic archaic forces. In fact, the great protagonist of the human condition is uh, a humanity blackmailed by biological life. That is necessity, the sheer need for bodily sustenance, the sheer need to have people who provide for the biological sustenance of others. So a humanity blackmailed by biological life. There is traversing traversing, progress, the forward temporality of progress. There is for Arendt another temporality, an archaic temporality, the temporality of necessity, which is in a way an anachronistic, return. Just when everybody thinks we have moved beyond necessity, necessity comes back to haunt progress, industrial, technological progress. The burden of biological life is at the center among the concerns in the human condition. It's this persistent, transhistorical, transgeographical, all-devouring nature biology cycle, which Arendt writes, weighs down and consumes the specifically human lifespan between birth and death. It's on page 119 of the human condition. But having taken stock of this anachronistic dimension, is the return of this anachronistic temporality of necessity, Arendt also uses it to champion, to invite a recalibration of the world, a rethinking of the world as an environment. This other modernity prompts that, a rethinking of the world and the kind of environment that it ought to be, that it can be for the future. So modernity holds in itself this archaic force, this regressive backward leap into a pre-linguistic biological dimension. Because the devouring nature biology cycle is always before language, before symbolic birth. So having presented, having offered the elements to read some passages from the human condition, I have singled out for you a few. I think they are quite engaging, but I could have chosen. I mean, as I said, it's a rather monumental work. I feel very humbled by presenting on Arendt for different reasons. First of all, I'm a literary scholar, though I love to work at the crossroads of disciplines, and I'm training myself to do that. I approach Arendt with humility because she is a philosopher, and reading, that it is possible, not only possible perhaps, but desirable, read philosophy as literature and vice versa. It's exciting, but I think I approach her a little bit, if I may, in all humility. There, the comparison a little bit as Foucault approached critique. The word critique had been pronounced for him by greater thinkers. And so I pronounce, these words, world, space of appearance, with humility, but also with excitement and with the desire to enlist Arendt in our toolbox to think within humanities within literary studies a vaster world, and where literature is an important tool. So, because of this other humanity, there is the importance of the exit from imprisonment in the privacy of the body. This is a quote from Human Condition, into a public realm where every individual makes his or her appearance explicitly, publicly. So this transition, this movement, this dynamic. Remember in Foucault, we had the subject turning slightly, gently away, that gentle indocility. Here we have a transition, an entrance, a step into. So let me read for you from some passages. I have to move something that is in the way of the slide. So this is from the public realm, the common. It means I will just leap to the green highlighted material. Uh, what do we mean by public? What do we mean by this shared world, common space in which we exit and we leave behind the conditional naked life? Well, it means first that everything that appears in public can be seen and heard by everybody. It is a place where everybody can be seen and heard among others, and has the widest possible publicity. Now, publicity not in the sense of spectacle, not in the sense of visibility for visibility's sake, but publicity is this mutual, reciprocal taking stock of another, whether that other is human, whether that other is a thing, whether that other is a creature. Publicity, very interesting word in translation, publicity. For us, appearance, remember the verb appear, here is the noun appearance, something that is being seen and heard by others, as well as by ourselves. Raquel wanted to experience, that is, wanted to hear herself being given the capacity to speak, being given, therefore, the symbolic birth. So, heard and seen by others and by ourselves constitutes reality. So, this sphere, this space, constitutes reality. What is real in the sense of real, not in the psychoanalytic sense of real, but in the realistic sense of reality, what we recognize as reality. Compared with what follows, even though it's not highlighted in green, is equally important. Compared with the reality which comes from being seen and heard, even the greatest forces of intimate life, the passions of the heart, the thoughts of the mind, the delights of the senses, lead an uncertain, shadowy kind of existence unless and until they are transformed, deprivatized, and de-individualized, as it were, into a shape to fit them for public appearance. Absolutely crucial. She's not saying that individual feelings, individual states of minds, individual thoughts do not matter. They do, but they matter only insofar as they transit toward the publicity, the publicness of the public sphere. They are transformed by that movement of externalization, which for Arendt is the fundamental presupposition of the political, because we are talking about the political, not politics, but the political. That space, the polis, okay, that space, society, shared worth where everybody can exist. So unless the private feelings, everything that is private, undergoes the transition, transformation, the movement of expression, externalization, okay, they matter very little. So the individual and society always linked to each other. There is no isolated ego and then the rest. Uh, Private experiences, individual thoughts, mental life, intellectual life, the senses must take on a shape to fit them. Notice the metaphors here put into place: shape, form. Remember how this problem was felt by Rich and HD, form and formlessness. In a way, Arendt is walking that boundary between form and formlessness. She's saying that unless individual thoughts, individual feelings, individual life undergoes the movement of externalization, okay, remains in the dark, formlessness, naked life. The body is the pit of formlessness after all. I have 2 minutes, so one more slide. Here we go. Second, this slide is helpful because it specifies the meaning of public. Second, the term public signifies the world itself. Remember that shared web, okay? Public signifies the world itself insofar as it is common to all of us, common to all of us, and distinguished from our privately owned place in it. Remember what we just said. Private life must be find expression, must be fitted to public life. This world, however, is not identical with the earth or with nature as the limited space for the movement of man and the general condition of organic life. It is related rather to the human artifact, the fabrication of human hands, as well as to affairs which go on among those who inhabit the man-made world together. So society, to the homo faber, it's the word of homo faber, not bios, not naked life. To live together in the world means essentially that the world of things, notice she uses things, is between those who have it in common, as a table is located between those who sit around. The world, like every in between, relates and separates men at the same time. So this is why the space of appearance matters. This world where everyone is and is related via the important mediation of objects. Arendt's articulation of the human condition implies traveling back in time and capturing a humanity imprisoned in the privacy of the body that continues to be forced into the darkness of pain and necessity. This is why the space of appearance, the ability to be seen and heard by others, is so vital. This is why language is so vital, and it would be a mistake from Arendt's point of view to discard our concern with language, or to just consider its violent works, because language can be violent as well. It would be a mistake, because the risk is to be always already pushed back into naked life. This is why the space of appearance, the ability to be seen and heard by others, is so vital. This is why language is so vital. The emphasis on publicity, on publicness, is confirmed by many other passages in human condition, but we don't have time to dwell on them. Hopefully, you will find in these slides the tools to study them on your own if you become curious about them. Let me, if possible, skip to the last slide, the conclusion, the works cited slide, actually, where you have the two major works I've drawn on. And in fact, that's the name I was looking for earlier on. Margaret Canovanus, the translator of The Human Condition, first published in 1958, but then reissued in the early 90s. I would stop here. Um, Thank you very much for your attention. Now, I know that it would be nice to invite immediate reactions. We can do so. We can take a few minutes, but then I would like to ask you to take a 5 minute break or even a short break, a 3 minute break before moving on the next lecture. Maybe get a coffee or a glass of water. What do you think? What does our coordinator think?
Yes, thank you, ma'am, for your insightful lecture. You have given enough food for thought for the participants. You have discussed multiple important things like word, language, space, etc. So we know that there will be multiple comments and questions. So we have a long tutorial session today. So we can take up the
Yes,
questions in the
I think
tutorial
so.
together so
I
that
think so.
it can be interactive.
Yes.
And you can take a 5 minute break and we can resume whenever you are ready. Okay,
Thank you
for
so
the